Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Yes, of course, it is Inspirate. It is our hope and prayer that you are inspired by our programs, because we want to talk about real issues and inshallah give authentic solutions. The program for today is being an entrepreneur. How do you define it? I often have difficulty pronouncing it. Being one, I'm sure, has other challenges. So Nizam, I'm going to ask you first, Nizam. How do you define?
Entrepreneur, the way I see it, Idris, is one who seizes an opportunity, finds this opportunity, then mobilizes resources. To serve the community by providing a product or a service for the greater good of mankind.
You know, Nizam, you speak about greater good for mankind. I'm not sure to what extent people are driven by it. And can you give us some examples of what perhaps could be one greater good?
If you look at some companies who manufacture, say, pharmaceutical products or whatever, they would say, right, our prime purpose was to serve and heal people. So they make products so that they can add value to society. Whilst there was a profit motive, if there's a profit motive, no issue. But primarily, underlying thought process is to make a difference.
Mohammed?
I totally agree with Nizam on this point. Mubin and I often talk about the power of why and the why behind a business. And as long as the principles behind a business and setting up that business is correct, the resultant flow of profit will always be there from that company, inshallah. I'd like to talk to Nizam's definition of an entrepreneur as well. It's someone with limited resources on that day who uses what they can on that particular day to make it happen. That for me is an entrepreneur.
So in other words, a person from almost nothing is able to do the right things and inshallah in that way grow as an individual.
Grow as an individual, and I think that sense of community, that sense of giving something back is extremely, extremely important. So if it's only profit driven, then you often find that those businesses are not sustainable over the length of time. If it's profit driven and the motive is profit from day one, an entrepreneur generally also is someone who takes something that they enjoy. So someone may enjoy manufacturing pharmaceuticals for the greater good, or may enjoy fixing cars, for example, and turns their passion or their hobby into a business. And very often those are the most successful entrepreneurs because their why is correct.
You know, Mohammed, I was also doing a bit of research, and I came across a part of this definition which states that an entrepreneur is an individual who accepts responsibility for the profit and the loss. So I wondered, does that make a distinction between him and any other ordinary business person?
I think it makes a big difference if you take an employee versus an entrepreneur, because an employee has a guaranteed paycheck, whereas an entrepreneur doesn't. And I think that's the courageousness of an entrepreneur, to go into the wild waters and make it happen against all odds. Because there is that possibility that he could lose his house or lose whatever capital that he may have risked. But at the same time, there is that great opportunity of good where he could benefit society, benefit his family, and find that financial freedom, which a lot of the time is a portion of the why that people want freedom. Because being an entrepreneur and being able to make your own decisions, run your own business, is a liberating thing, and a lot of people want that freedom. So yes, that's the good, but there also is the risk of having the losses, as you very well have mentioned.
And you know, guys, I heard a businessman, and whom I regard as an entrepreneur. One day, someone did him down for lots of money. So I empathized with him because he's my friend. So I said to him, you seem okay. And his response was, you win some and you lose some. And really that has informed my life in many ways. To what extent that slogan you think, Nizam, is a good slogan?
If you look at it, entrepreneurs by nature are risk takers. So they realize that the terrain is about winning and losing, and gaining and sharing. It's about both. It's not only winning and losing, but also sharing and contributing. So if you look at it, they are really people who are very persistent, very determined entrepreneurs, and never give up. They're very focused, they're driven, and very passionate. And because they're passionate and because they always see this bigger picture, they have this big vision of where they want to, what they want to achieve, they don't get stuck by obstacles. They always find a way around overcoming any obstacle or any challenge. And they use obstacles as a means to stimulate them and seize an opportunity out of them.
Because I'm glad you're mentioning it, because one of the things that we want to speak about, what are the attributes of an entrepreneur? Because the impression many people get, and I often tell this to people, when you look at anyone who enjoys a modicum of success, no matter what it is, we make assumptions, perhaps his father left him lots of money, he was lucky. Yet when you talk to him, that individual, you realize there have been many impediments in his life, yet he was able to overcome those impediments. So besides the qualities that you mentioned, what are other significant qualities? Because I'm sure there are many viewers at home who are sitting there, young people, many of them are aspiring to become one such entrepreneur. Another person perhaps is going through some challenge in his business. Perhaps he requires an attitudinal change. So what are some of the qualities you think are necessary for these people to embrace? What should they do?
Before we go any further, I'd like to re-emphasize Nizam's point here about resilience. I think resilience for me is the number one attribute of entrepreneurs. And I think very often we see failure in bad light. But the greatest opportunities are often born out of what we call failures. I don't like to call it failures. I like to call them temporary challenges at a point in time. Speaking to something, a businessman that I knew, a similar story to yours, someone owed him a lot of money and didn't pay him. So I met him one day and I asked him, listen, how are you doing? So he says, no, I'm okay. I sleep like a baby. So I said, how can you sleep like a baby? He says, no, I wake up every 2 hours and I cry. But he carried on.
I like that. I want to share that with people.
But he carried on. And today he's probably made 50, 100 times more money than he lost. He could have at that point in time shut shop and gone to work for someone and said, listen, I'm done. I'm not an entrepreneur. But he got back on his horse and he rode. And today he's all the better for it.
In fact, Mohammed, when you spoke about failing, I came across the title of a book called Failing Forward. And the thesis of this book is you learn more from failure than from successes. And it's very important for us to take lessons. And as Muslims, we believe we're not stung by the same hole twice. You make a mistake, you move on. Do not repeat those mistakes, Mubin, is there anything else you want to add in terms of some of the qualities or attributes such individuals possess?
I think by design the world is created such that we're made to believe that if we didn't succeed at a particular thing that we're losers or we failed. And I think that by design forces people out of the trade or forces you not to do business, whereas in essence that's the very thing you need to move forward. Because if you're not making the mistakes, how are you going to learn? There's just nobody that knows everything. So you've got to make the mistakes. And I live by, I think it's Muhammad Ali who has the saying that it's not how hard you can hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving. And that comes back to resilience, because if you just keep coming back, it's got to give. And that's, I think, one of the qualities for me that's very key, because you can have all the other qualities, the passion, the drive and whatever. But if you have that resilience, it's got to give at some point. And that for me is what creates real success.
I think that's an excellent point that you raised. And Nizam, I was just reflecting on your introduction when you spoke about a bigger cause, And for me, if someone has a bigger cause, a noble cause, he's so passionate about it. And no matter what obstacles, because he realizes there lots of people are, in inverted commas, dependent on him. There are many people who benefit from his expertise and whatever he does. So that also drives him. How compelling is that? Is that compelling for all individuals or a few individuals?
Look, it just depends on how people interpret the bigger cause. Because you cannot provide a service that is not beneficial to anybody. So if you're providing a product or a service, it must add value. If it's not adding value, then you're not serving the community or the society or your consumer with a need. So whatever it is, the way you interpret it, it's very important. And the other point is, when you're saying failing forward, it's all about feedback. The entrepreneur doesn't look at failure as failure. He or she looks at it as what? Feedback from the marketplace. And regardless of the feedback, because success can get you into a comfort zone. And if there's a balance between the two, then what happens, you in that healthy space of healthy discomfort, always striving, not going into the comfort zone, but always striving to do better.
There's so much to learn in terms of who an entrepreneur is, the kind of qualities he needs to possess, and that you don't have to have money to make money.
Correct.
And it's an attitudinal thing, and I think we need to embrace it. And I think the whole idea about being philanthropic and looking at a bigger cause, and that's wonderful. And I'm sure my beloved viewers, you have enjoyed the first segment, and we'll be back.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. I'm sure the first segment made you think. You are chatting with your family, and I hope some of you are inspired to say, listen guys, come on daddy, give me a chance. I think I have those qualities. Inshallah, who knows? Who knows? Yes, we spoke about defining who's an entrepreneur, and now, Muhammad, I want to ask you this question. Why? Why entrepreneurship? Why is it important to be one?
There's two things for me. The first is freedom. Both freedom to carve your own path, to make a difference, and financial freedom. Let's not forget about financial freedom. And inshallah, if you build a successful business, that freedom generally comes. The second part of it, and what resonates for me more, is the ability to create something. So when you go to the office every day, or you go to your factory every day, you say that with Allah Ta'ala's help, you have created this. And that for me are the two most important conclusions that are reached by being an entrepreneur.
So you say, guys, I'm so excited.
Exactly.
The whole idea, when you involve, it's your passion, you love what you do. It's a beautiful thing. Not many people, enjoy this on a day-to-day basis.
It's very interesting. I was reading an article recently about lifestyle entrepreneurs. And essentially they say, there's a saying that goes something to the effect that if you do something you love, you will never work a day in your life.
Correct, yes.
So if you're using your passion to generate an income, what a pleasure. What a pleasure.
Yes, Mobin, you want to add to what Mohammed has said?
No, I agree with Mohammed, and I think what's important is that you're finding your passion and you're doing something that you enjoy. Because a lot of people wake up in the morning and go to work feeling that I need to make a living. But if you're really having fun, if you're spending a third of your life doing something, then I think you should spend that third doing something you enjoy. That makes a massive difference. And furthermore, you're employing people, you're benefiting the economic chain. People, there's many economies of the world that have survived because of the large numbers of entrepreneurs that have come through the system. I think South Africa is one of those countries that are on a huge entrepreneurship drive because it's what our economy needs. Entrepreneurs keep the money circulating in the country and within the economy, and that's key for us.
And they're the backbone of a society. Of an economy. Because what happens, entrepreneurs add value to society, and also they have the right mindset. And they have that abundance mentality. They're very positive, and they continuously making a difference. And if you look at their mindset and skill set, they have good relational skills. They have good financial skills. They get on with the job. They make things happen.
They're creators.
They're creators. Yeah.
Innovators also.
Yeah, well, corporations were born at some point from an entrepreneur, I would think. So if we don't have entrepreneurs coming through the system at some point, where are all the people going to get the jobs from?
But the biggest risk to these big corporations are entrepreneurs. Because entrepreneurs are innovative generally by nature. They can act swiftly, and their route to market is often much quicker than the corporate because decisions are made in a boardroom, whereas an entrepreneur generally makes a decision himself. I was reading an interesting article the other day also about Uber. the taxi service. I mean, imagine a taxi service, the biggest taxi service in the world, doesn't have any fixed assets in terms of vehicles. Now, this was born out of an idea by an entrepreneur. And like that, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of examples where entrepreneurs have come up with innovation and changed the face of economies and societies.
Mohammed, I'm hoping the author is not taking for a ride, talking about taxis. Anyway, it's a joke. Anyway, Nizam, you said something and it resonates with me because I'm into EQ and into relationships. You mentioned relationships. How important is it in terms of the world of an entrepreneur?
Entrepreneurs have to have relationships with their customers, with their suppliers, with their consumers, with with the employees. So everything we do is basically relationship based. We cannot get away, whether you're an entrepreneur, a teacher, a mother, a parent, whatever it is, whatever roles we have. Relationship is basically at the heartbeat of our life. So I think entrepreneurs also have to develop good relationship skills.
You may have an individual who is watching this program and he says, you know what, it sounds very romantic, I like it, I think I have the attributes. I mean, what would you say is the starting point?
His starting point, in my opinion, is to ensure that his business model doesn't have to be 100% complete, but his idea needs to be able to generate money at a point. Because even though, and I may go back a little bit on what I said earlier on, even though he's passionate about something, does it have the ability to generate money? The statistic is, and it's a worldwide statistic, a South African statistic, an African statistic, is that 8 out of 10 businesses within the first 3 years of them trading will fail. My argument against that is there are 5 of those businesses that should never have started off at the beginning because their business model was not compelling enough. It was not sustainable. And generally, if I want to start a business, I'll go to my friend Mubin and I'll tell Mubin, listen, I want to start this business. Mubin, because he's my friend and he wants to encourage me, he'll say, yes, Mohammed, go ahead and do the business. But he said that because he's my friend. Very often, we don't have sounding boards, and I think that's where mentors come in. People who've been successful in business or entrepreneurs is go to a person like that and ask them their advice. Don't ask the wrong people because you're going to get the wrong answer. So that for me is a big consideration, Idris.
So what you are saying, it's important not to go into something with a blindfold. Is to engage with people that will give you the proper advice.
Exactly, that's very important, but don't engage with too many people. I often get people who want to take advice of hundreds of people.
Yeah.
So they have this idea and they carry on continuing to talk about it. Is you have to get route to market. Go to a few individuals, a few people who you consider to be successful, who you consider to be your mentor, who could, if possible, if the need be, invest money in the business and would invest hard-earned money in the business and ask them their opinion. Don't go to the wrong people and ask of their opinion.
In fact, I know there's a friend of mine, Nizam, who once told me, too much of analysis gives you paralysis.
Exactly.
What happens, it dissipates into inaction. Of the Shakespearean play Hamlet, to be or not to be. It is cursed spite that I was born to set it right. The drama in me must come out. Mubin, what about you? What are some of the starting points? Some advice, practical advice you can give someone?
For me, would be to find your product and not invest money in the product before you have understood if there's a market for that product. So take the product, go and understand, take it to Nizam and say, Nizam, what do you think of this product? And he'll give you some ideas. Whether it's a pen, he'll say, make it gold. Take it to Mohammed, he'll say, you know what, add a bit of black to it, and I'll pay 2 Rand for it. And then go round and round and round and hear what people have to say. Once you have found out what people have to say, then go back to a manufacturer and try to cut the deal with the manufacturer. If they can get a really good deal from there, take it back to Nizam and say, Nizam, I have no money. I've got 5,000 orders for this product based on what you told me. You think it must be gold and black and whatever. Can you invest the money? I'll give you 20% of the company. So since Nizam was at the start of the project, he looked at it, he was happy with it. You picked up 5,000 orders based on what he had advised you on. He invests the money, you start the business with no money. So like that, you can create something with no money, but you know that people want it. A lot of the time, people want offices. Offices don't make money. You got to get in your car and find the clients for the product. Once you have the clients, the office will be born for an administrative function. But you still shouldn't be in that office. You should be talking to the clients and understanding what's happening on the ground. Because if you understand that, you can continue innovating the product and putting the right products into market and getting the right amount of money for that product. Because if you're listening to analysts on the ground, they might not see the vision and have the passion that you have, and then you might be shortchanged with what could be the outcome of your product. So be on the shop floor.
And continuously improve the product.
Oh yeah, you've
So
got to be
never
innovative.
stop.
But that's what makes an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so in other words, there's a gradual improvement program all the time. It's continuously improving the product, the service, and the whole process is change all the time. So you're not static, it's a dynamic organization, re-improving, renewing the organization, and renewing the product and the service.
You're 100% right, Nizam. But the other thing for me is that you've got to back yourself. And you often cannot follow the herd. You know, I remember reading in Steve Jobs' book, he talks about when he had to come out with the MacBook Air. And he came into the office one day and he spoke to his guys and he told the guys, listen, I want a computer that will fold, that will fit into an A4 envelope. And they said it's not possible.
Correct.
They said it's impossible to do that. And he said it will happen. And very often it's a lonely place as an entrepreneur and people sometimes think you're crazy. But that's the only way, if we push the boundaries, that's the only way we will get innovation within the world.
So it means you have to believe.
You have to
The
believe.
key is have absolute faith and believe in what you're trying to achieve.
Correct.
Because there will be obstacles, there will be opposition, but you have to find a way to get alignment and unification in that one direction. And harnessing the collective genius of everybody on the team.
Correct.
Having that end in mind, I think.
Correct.
And I think another thing, if you have that end in mind, if you reverse engineer the process,
Exactly.
it'll give you the ultimate answers of what you need to do. Because you get a guy that, you want to do a business and you say, I need to make 10 Rand. But if you really look at the business model, at its peak, it might not be able to make the 10 Rand. So if you know, I want to make 10 Rand, what does it require? It requires 10 customers at 1 Rand. So you now break it out into a sizable chunk of something you need to do to to attain the goal.
So this is what I gained from this segment. The whole idea about you got to have self-belief, you got to think about it, you got to engage people, you got to have the mindset, you got to have the right kind of positive attitude, and it can be done. What all of you are saying, it can be done. So you can't sit back and be a spectator and hope things happen. So there we have it, my brothers and sisters, and we'll be back just now.
Time is now. Time is now.
Yes, I'm sure you enjoyed the first two segments. Alhamdulillah, we are very fortunate that one of the great entrepreneurs of the world, James Khan, has come to our country. Yusuf Dinda, one of our colleagues, interviewed him.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
James, if you can tell me a little bit about your background.
My parents are from Pakistan, and they came to England in 1960, so just over 50 years ago. And I pretty much spent most of my life, I was 2 when I arrived in England, so I've now been living in England for just over 50 years.
And do you see yourself as Pakistani still or the UK?
Ultimately you can't deny your heritage. My heritage, is I'm a Pakistani, I'm a Muslim, and whether you live in any part of the world, your roots are your roots. Your faith is your faith.
You've had a interesting and intriguing relationship with your dad. I believe you disappointed him in your youth when you left his family business, and then later you've developed a more intimate relationship with him from a business perspective. If you can share that a little bit with us,
Sure.
from a family value perspective.
Most Asian parents anywhere in the world have this vision that their sons will enter the family business. And my father had a very successful business, and it was his dream and ambition that his sons would join the family business and take over the family business. But unfortunately, his business was not my passion. His business wasn't my dream. It was his dream, and I wanted to create my own dream. I wanted to make my own dream a reality. So when the time came for me to enter the business, I said to my father, it's not for me, and I want to go out into the world and find my own dream. And he found that very difficult to accept, because in our culture, the father is the head of the family, and what he says goes. So, I clearly let him down. I broke his heart by not joining the family business, and I went off and effectively did my own thing. But in a funny sort of way, I think I owe a lot of my success to him, because for the rest of my life, I was on a mission to demonstrate to him that I'd made the right choice. Because having let him down so badly, failing wasn't an option. Because I couldn't live with the fact that I'd not only let him down, but then I let myself down.
How did you go about achieving that dream of yours?
So I started my own recruitment agency. I took this tiny office in a great location in London, in Pall Mall, because somebody said to me that your address is very important when you have a business. So I sacrificed the office for the right address. And the office that I got was like a broom cupboard. It was tiny. It was a little desk. You opened the door, you hit the desk. There was only one chair. So it was me, the phone, the desk, the yellow pages. And that was the birth of my business. And I named the company Alexander Mann. And mashallah, we grew the company to over £130 million in fees. It felt to me that I'd grown a business, in fact, bigger than my father's business. And Alexander Mann was my UK brand, and Humana was my global business. So we created Humana, and I grew Humana to 147 offices in 30 countries around the world. And we were having a celebration at the Dorchester Hotel, and we were holding a celebration party because we just opened a 100th office. And it was a really proud moment for me. It was an incredible achievement. And I invited my father to the celebration, and I was giving a speech, and behind me there was a map of the world. As I was giving my speech, I could see in the audience my father's face, and there was tears coming down his eyes, because he hadn't appreciated, he hadn't realised just how big the business had become. And as soon as I came off the stage, I came downstairs, I was shaking everybody's hand, and my father came up to me and he embraced me. And, he said one sentence, but that sentence was the most important sentence that I'd spent my life wanting to hear, which is, I'm really proud of you, son.
Would you say that the person behind the business is more important than the opportunity?
Absolutely, because I've been in business for 30 years now, and there is no question in my mind that it is people who make success in business, not businesses that become successful. You need the person behind the business to breathe life into the business. You can have the best idea in the world, you can have the best product in the world, but it doesn't work by itself. It needs the person with the vision, with the ideas, with the drive, with the determination, with the right DNA. And I was on holiday here in South Africa, 6 months ago. And when I arrived here, I felt a real vibe here. There's a real passion here. The people of South Africa are driven, they're motivated, and they all have a dream. What they lack is the opportunity, the platform, and maybe the role model to give them the confidence that they too can achieve their dreams.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm sure you enjoyed the interview done by our brother Yusuf Dinda, and I'm sure you also found James Khan an inspiration. Indeed, what an inspiration. Mohammed, you met him, you spent some time with him, and what lessons you gleaned from this short interview?
I think the lessons that I've gleaned and that we can share with the viewers is the one that he turned his back on his father's fairly successful business. So his father was an immigrant from Pakistan who came to Brick Lane in London and started a very successful tailor operation. Like many of the businesses in our country and family businesses in general, we always like to give that business over to the next generation. He turned his back on his father. He said that he didn't want to go into the tailor business. He didn't want to go into the jacket making business. He told his father he wants to go into the recruitment business. His father couldn't understand it. that you are literally making money from nothing. But he turned his back on his father. It caused a huge conflict in the family at the time. But he believed in himself. He backed himself, like we talked about earlier on. And after a number of years, his father came back to him and commended him and said, I never had belief in you or your idea at the time, but I've come to know that you've made a huge, huge success out of it.
You know, Mohammed, I recall reading that in his book, and there was a poignancy and a sadness when he parted. But I was so happy that they had reconciled. And just something light-hearted, it was my own life. And my beloved father said to me, son, you must never open up a shop, because you go bankrupt the first day. Someone will come to you with a sad story, right? Because, and business wasn't my passion, and I found something else, alhamdulillah. Mubin, what about you?
If there's something I've learned from James, is that the fact that he's an exceptionally creative guy. Because when he left Brick Lane, he went over to Pall Mall, which is a very illustrious suburb for offices. And he took a very expensive office that was so small it had, I think it was just like the size of a broom cupboard. That's what he describes it as, when you talk to him. And what he did there was use that as his address, because people would take his business more seriously. But where he was more creative was he called the business Alexander Mann. And when he would call companies, he would talk as though he was working for Alexander Mann. And it was this old company established many years ago, whatever it may be. And people would take him very seriously because of Alexander Mann. And that's how he helped build his business up, because he was a perception specialist. He knew how to get into the minds and the hearts of people by making them believe his services were really good. So for me, if you're creative and innovative, it makes it quite easy for you to move forth in business.
Nizam?
Also, the other thing one can learn from James, he operated 40 businesses. He's operating 40 businesses. He's involved in many other activities. So he can only do that because he's running a very professional organization. He's not working in the business, he's working on the business. And you can see that he's continuously improvising. He uses his time very wisely. He's very professional in his approach. And he makes swift decisions. He is very determined to achieve good results, and he manages every business meticulously. He was telling us a story that on every Sunday, he'll look at all his businesses, he'll check all the numbers, and then any business that's not performing, he'll call up the necessary manager or the CEO or the MD, and he will tell the person what other corrective actions he will take or she will take. So he's continuously remedying what might not be working, and obviously amplifying and supporting those things that need to be highlighted and making those things work even better.
What's driven him, I think, even further is that he has this foundation of his. I think in Pakistan he's rebuilt an entire village after the flood. I think that's what drives him a lot as well, because he has a greater purpose for what he does.
Right.
Because his level of success is second to none. I mean, running 40 companies is very difficult. I think you need to organize your effort exceptionally well to do that. But I think that these philanthropic actions drive him even further.
So there we have it, my beloved brothers and sisters. Who knows? Perhaps you can be the next James Khan. We'll see you immediately after this break.
Time is now. Time is now.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for coming back. Nizam, in the break you were chatting about the phases involved. I think it's very important that you share that with the viewers.
Yeah, Idris, as we were saying, that, any organization goes through about 3 key phases, right? The first phase is the entrepreneurial phase, where the structure of the organization is very flat. The entrepreneur does virtually everything, and you call that the formation of capital, where costs are kept low, and you just want to preserve capital because you're formulating and creating an organization. Then you get into the growth phase, where the entrepreneur structures the organization. It's more formalized. The entrepreneur brings in more people into the business, and here you're actually forming capital and growing your capital base. Then we go through the mature phase, and in this phase, you get to that point where you get into a point where if you don't reinvent the organization, an organization can very easily go into decline. So this is where you have to re-energize the organization, and most important, it is because you can't be in that preservation of capital. So those are the three key phases in any organization. That's how I see it.
Mohammed, when you listen to Nizam, do you have examples of individuals or organizations who are static? They feel they're in a comfort zone. And Nizam speaks about re-energizing. How relevant is that?
My focus, Idris, is more at the beginning phase and helping entrepreneurs move beyond that entrepreneurial aspect and growing an enterprise. So I'll use a practical example. We all have tried to use plumbers or electricians or tradesmen, and very often you find that these guys are fairly busy. They always have a hectic schedule. They may tell you they're coming tomorrow, may not come tomorrow, may come the next day. The secret here is to move from a tradesman mentality to an enterprise mentality. So for example, if a plumber finds that he's getting calls every day and getting more calls that he can handle, he employs another plumber and gets another bucky on the road and increases and scales his business that way. Very often, entrepreneurs can't move beyond that entrepreneurial phase, because an entrepreneur at the beginning, he's everything. He's a delivery man, he's a salesman, he's the accountant. At a point, he needs to give up those duties that probably created the success in the first place, delegate those duties, and work on the business, as Nizam said, rather than in the business. And I often find that transition is the hardest, because of that passion of that entrepreneur, that they want to do everything, they want to be operational. But you have to move beyond that, otherwise you never scale or you never grow your business to the next phase.
Mubin, the question I want to ask, do you find there's a reluctance on the part of people to do that, to get other people involved? They want to do it themselves.
I think just the point there, I think the entrepreneur has to upskill himself. It's increasing the skill set, because it's easier sometimes to do it yourself than to do it through people.
I think entrepreneurs fall in love with the job, and then what happens is that they want to scale, and they're stuck between this fight. That I want to get bigger and I want to grow the company because it's becoming frustrating that we are at capacity right now. But then he doesn't want to employ the relevant people or the relevant skill who might cost an X amount of money, and he wouldn't want to pay that.
But for me, more important than that, talking to your point, which is a very relevant point, it's about doing justice to the business and the business model. Very often you'll find an entrepreneur, when you ask him, listen, why don't you grow your business? You can get more locations, you can get more people on your sales force. They say, no, I'm happy, I earn enough. That shows that they haven't divorced themselves from the business, because it's about doing justice to that business. If that business was owned by a corporate, the corporate would flog that business and make sure that business grew by X percentage every year. Now, as an entrepreneur, sometimes or very often when we move through the phases, we have to divorce ourselves from the business, treat it as if it was a corporate, and treat it as arm's length. It doesn't matter that may make 1 rand or 10 rand. It's what is the potential of that business, and the potential of that business is making 20 rand, and we're not doing that. We need to remedy that very quickly.
That's right.
So is there also, this whole element of trust? I think sometimes people do not trust others, say, this is my business, I worked hard at it, another guy is going to come there, might usurp me of my position, or, it might dilute the funds. Is trust, Nizam, an important aspect?
Look, the one key thing as an entrepreneur and any professional manager, doesn't matter, you have to trust people.
Yes.
Trust is the most important thing, and you have to trust people because it's through trust that you build a relationship, as we were saying earlier, and then you can grow the business even further.
I think what develops the lack of trust is the fact that the entrepreneur might not have the system to operate the business or the checks and balances of the controls.
It's true.
Because he runs it himself. He says, I don't need to reconcile the bank. I do it myself. I'm not going to take any money from it. And if you have to pass the job description on to someone, you're obviously not going to trust them.
That's the first part of it, where we talk about systems and financial controls, etc. The second part of it, and I think what Idris was talking about, was the fact that someone may come to know your recipe for success or your business model. But in the economy and the world that we live in, where information is free, it's more about your execution than knowing the formula for success. And that's often where an entrepreneur has the unique advantage, is his ability to execute on his idea more than his idea. I'll give you an example. You often ask someone, listen, so someone comes to you and say they want to start a business, and you ask them, what business do you want to start? And they're very cagey about the business because they don't want you to steal their business idea. Ideas are a dime a dozen. People wake up every day and have thousands of ideas. And one word to the viewers is it's your execution more than anything else. You can copy a business, but if your execution is better, then you will be a better business. Being an entrepreneur is not about being the next Steve Jobs or being someone unique or coming up with a unique product or service. As long as you can provide that product or service at a better price, with better quality, with better service, you can do better.
Yes, guys, I'm really enjoying this discussion. It's so animated, it's so practical. Now, for the viewers, what is a message, a take-home message for a person? What is something you need to tell someone that when he goes back, it will make him think, reflect on his own life, and hopefully be inspired to do something different?
For me, it's one word, I talked to it earlier on, it's resilience. It's never say die, and it's about failing fast. Nizam talked earlier on about failing forward and learning from our failures or challenges. But if your business model is not working, you fail it fast and you try something else. So you give it justice and you make sure that you put enough in terms of your effort. But if it's not working, move swiftly along. Otherwise, you're going to waste your time, your money, and your resources.
As I say, if we do the same things the same way every day, expect the same results. Nizam, what about you, Nizam?
The other thing is focus, then get up to altitude, and then soar like an eagle. And that is very important as an entrepreneur.
Yes, focus, as we are speaking about, is very critical, isn't it? To be focused, understand what your vision is, and go for it, right? You get your detractors, your naysayers will say, no, it's impossible. But it is possible.
To add to what my two brothers here have to say, I think they had some really great points. But for me, I think business is something that can be done by everybody. And there's only really 3 elements of any business that you need to manage. And if you increase the number of clients, increase the average spend per client, and bring your clients back more often, and if you can get that formula right, I think any business can succeed. But those are the elements. And over and above that, your detail needs to be on point. But for me, those 3 elements, you should be okay.
Yes, there we have it, our beloved brothers and sisters. What a beautiful discussion about a topic that impacts on the lives of so many people. Yes, I know you are sitting there and perhaps you are inspired. What you need is resilience, to have self-belief, and also to engage with many successful people. Find out, because no one wants to be a spectator in our lives. No one wants to have a victim mentality. And yes, you can do it. Our aim is to inspire you. I'm sure there are many educationists watching the program, and I want to recommend very strongly that we need to introduce these ideas in our schools, because there are many students, many learners who are creative, who have the passion, have the right kind of attitudes. And never say you cannot do it. Don't hold yourself back, because we believe you can do it. So guys, really it has been wonderful interacting with you. Mohammed, to you first, Jazakumullah for your insight, your involvement, and it's quite clear you have a passion. And to you, Mobin, also, Alhamdulillah, we enjoyed the discussion, and what I particularly liked was how y'all got together, y'all interacted without any provocation from me, and you know me, I like to provoke you sometimes. Thank you, Mobin. And of course, Nizam, with your with your philosophy of life, your understanding, and shukran again for enriching all of us. Yes, there we have it. Inspirate. The time is now and not tomorrow. This is Idris Kamisa saying, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.